The pic that you see was taken during the arrival of the rescue helicopter in the area of the plane crash that occurred in the late winter of 1972. It portrays a few survivors exhausted after 2 months in the cold and without food, almost on the top of the mountain in the Andes, on the border between Argentina and Chile. There are moments in which we reach our limit, beyond which there is only the death. In order to not exceed it, we thus think that we never thought we would reach in our life. On October 12, 1972, that flight departed from Montevideo. On board was the entire rugby team of the Old Christmas Club, who had to go to Santiago for a match. The flight was operated by the Uruguayan Air Force, which had started operating charter flights to supplement its economy. However, that day there was bad weather. The fog was dense, not exactly the ideal climate to cross the Andes, with a Fokker F-27 with just 45 seats. For this reason, the captain preferred to land at the airport of Mendoza, an Argentine city immediately east of the Andes, to restart the next morning. The next day, the condition had not improved. However, the Uruguayan plane was in a country, Argentina, in which, due to the regulation in force, foreign aircraft could not be stationed for more than 24 hours, and so it was forced to fly, risking crossing the Andes with an unfavorable climate. Around 3 p.m., the airplane was over the Andes, and they alerted the control tower of Santiago, saying it was in the city of Curicó, and asking the permission to descend. It was a mistake, since the plane was not over this city. The left wing of the plane crashed into the side of the peak and broke off, already pulling out 2 crew members and 3 passengers. After, the aircraft also lost the other wings while the rest of the fuselage fell on the mountain and slid down the slope until it stopped downstream, at about 3,500 meters above sea level. Of the 45 people on board, 12 died in the impact, and the other 5 in the following 24 hours. But what just happened was only the beginning of the series of dramatic events during the following 2 months. As always happens in these cases, the Chilean and Argentine authorities began a series of searches without finding traces of the plane, which had crashed in an area characterized by mountain peaks that exceeded 5,000 meters, making searches particularly difficult. On October 21, for this reason, our rescue activities were concluded, and there was no longer any hope for the passengers of the flight. In fact, in the middle of the mountain range, most of the passengers on the plane remained alive. They were in an inhospitable terrain at 3,800 meters above sea level, in the middle of the snow, with temperatures that at night even reached 30 degrees or Fahrenheit below zero. In this situation, the survivors only had to look for a way to organize and survive. The problems were many. First of all, they did not know exactly where they were. The accident had occurred in a high mountain. The survivors were located near the remains of the aircraft's fuselage. The tie of wings had detached during the impact, which was therefore their main shelter, but which, being open, was not enough to warm up from such freezing temperatures. For this reason, the passenger bought a whale of suitcases to prevent the cold. The food consisted of what was on board the plane and that could be recovered in the fuselage, and for this reason it was carefully rationed, hoping that it could last as long as possible. The lunch consisted of a finger of wine and jam, while the dinner in a square of chocolate. One after another, many survivors, some were injured in the accident, began to die. The others organized themselves into groups to try to resist as much as possible, hoping to get out of that dramatic situation. The time passed, the food was scarce, and through a radio they had on board, they learned that the authorities had stopped the searching. When the rations were over, they made a dramatic decision. They decided to feed on the bodies of their dead companions. This extreme choice, discussed for days, guaranteed him to survive. But for them the drama was not yet over. On October 29, in fact, an avalanche swept the fuselage, killing 8 other people. On November 15, a month after the accident, the survivors decided they couldn't wait any longer. 4 of them organized an expedition in search of food and people. While this expedition did not lead to any contact with other people, it did allow to find the tail of the plane, which broke off during the impact, with some provision and clean clothes inside. However, the failure to rescue began to increase the survivors' frustration. In December, 2 months after the accident, only 16 of the 45 passengers on the flight were still alive. The snow was melting now, but the food was finished again, and the survivors were running low on the strength. They thought at last chance to reach Chile by foot. Roberto Canessa, Fernando Parrado, and Antonio Vicentin were chosen to carry out this dramatic assignment. However, once they reached the peak and seeing the vastness ahead, one of the 3 returns at the group, because there was not enough food for everyone. After 10 days of walking, the 2 men saw the first trace of human presence, cows and metal boxes abandoned on the ground. Then they meet Sergio Catalan, a herdsman who worked in that area. They explained who they were and, above all, that there were 14 people waiting a rescue. The man did not hesitate to travel miles on his horse to ask for help. It was thanks to him that the people who survived the disaster were rescued. About 70 days had passed since the disaster. On December 23, 2 helicopters left Santiago de Chile to organize the rescue of the survivors. In the following years, their story went around the world, and many excursions were organized to the place where the plane crashed. In 2005, during an excursion, an American mountaineer found a sack containing the personal effects of one of the 16 survivors. Still today, the Andes flight disaster is seen as an incredible story.